Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
You know, the footprint of the BJ Show just keeps getting larger and larger and larger because live from Studio JC and not Corcoran, here's John Combest.
What a comparison to JC Corcoran. Thank you, Brad.
You're in the Studio JC, correct?
I am in a mobile studio at the moment. That's absolutely correct.
You were, and I checked in 2 or 3 times last night, and I understand that in the entire state, the county that was having problems with reporting was St. Charles County. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I believe that I have a link up to it today, Brad. I just started this brand new website, johncombest.com. You should check it out. And the headline is Glitch Delays St. Charles County Election Results.
And as I understand it, when the glitch was finally fixed, some of the races turned around, right? Because those St. Charles County people were were putting other candidates over the top. Did I steal your thunder from some of your stories there, or what?
No, you're not stealing the thunder at all. I think another way to put it is that if you've been watching election results over the years, you're used to the urban areas coming in very late, whether it's St. Louis City, sometimes St. Louis County, certainly Kansas City. So you can't really tell what happens. You have to factor that in as election results come in of where you're missing votes. And it is rare. It's really rare, Brad, for St. Charles County to be so late. And in fact, St. Louis County, several precincts in St. Louis County were, I think it's fair to say, later than usual this election cycle. And in the lieutenant governor's race, maybe we'll get to that in a little while. That's not part of my top 3. But in the lieutenant governor's race, we saw that as votes came in from St. Louis County, it definitely swung the momentum, at least of the results of that election.
Interesting. Well, that is the voice of John Combest, who is not in his usual studio. He's in Studio JC and not Corcoran this morning. He puts together this list, no matter where he's at. He could be in St. Charles, he could be in his normal place I think he lives in Huntley or something like that. He could be anywhere in the world, and he puts together a list, which sometimes is as many as 40 different stories. 40 or more sometimes, I understand. That's on johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, johncombest.com. We start the show off every morning by bringing this guy in, and his name is...
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what he does is he counts things down for us. We start him off.
Now on with the countdown.
And we start with?
In third place,
a couple elections in St. Charles County, Brad, that you and I have talked about and that we expected to be very close down to the wire. And Brad, I can't speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. They were, in fact, not very close at all. We'll start in a state rep race in Lake St. Louis. We've talked quite a bit about a gentleman named Max Calfo running against a man named Mike Koslow. Brad, you've pointed out that Mike Koslow sounds like he should have a discount emporium named after him, right?
That's right. He should be down the street from Costco. It'd be Costflow and Costco, right?
It could be a competitive store. However, in that race, Mike Koslow won 60% to 40%, Brad. So that was a delta there of almost 1,000 votes in that race. I expected the race to be closer, if only because Max Calfo has been running for quite a while, has been running an aggressive campaign. And Brad, the second race that I would point to is one that we've spent among state Senate races. This race dominated our conversations as it relates to the state Senate, and that was Representative Phil Christofanelli versus Representative Adam Schnelting. I at least thought it was going to be nip and tuck to the very end. Ended up being not even close. Representative Adam Schnelting will represent the state Senate district currently held by Bill Eigel. He won 50% to 28%, Brad. It wasn't even close. And in fact, the third place candidate, Rich Crismer, I thought Rich Crismer might at some point be a spoiler and affect the outcome of this race. Rich did indeed get a little bit north of 15% of the vote. Even if every one of those votes had gone to Phil Christofanelli, Adam Schnelting still would have come out victorious.
Yeah, it was from what I heard it was going to be like you said, it was going to be a close race, and it didn't turn out that way at all, did it?
It didn't. And, there'll be a lot of postmortems done about this race, as with a lot of other races. But from what I hear, it got pretty nasty. I think there were some personal issues. Brad, it's stuff that you and I have discussed before. And you certainly have a really conservative member of the House moving over to the Senate now.
Well, I can tell you the whole problem.
I bet it has to do with I don't know, some kind of advertisements.
They didn't buy any. The Christofanelli team didn't buy any ads on this station, nor did they buy anything in Westplex 107.1.
Tipped it.
So all those suburban women that listen to Westplex 107.1 going, I don't know who to vote for. And what happened was on the way there was Schnelting was standing out in front of the polling place, and he says, "Hi, I'm the Schnelting candidate. Vote for me." And they go, "Well, you know what? I haven't heard any radio ads for you either. But you know what? Here you are. So I'm going to vote for you." So
yeah, well, and Schnelting had been on 97.1. Maybe he did ads there. I'm not sure. And by the way, if you're an advertiser and you would love information about the demographics of Westplex 107.1, an extensive document exists in Brad Hildebrand's head, and you can contact him and get all that demographic and deep listener research. It exists in Brad's head.
John, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I've just thrown in the towel. As far as I'm concerned, can I be blunt?
Please do.
Except for one advertiser we had Mary Elizabeth Coleman, who bought some ads in the station. The rest of you guys, screw you.
Yeah.
How's that? Once again, you talk about we have to help local businesses. We have to, and what do? You send your money to Philadelphia and Minneapolis and New York, and we have to help local businesses. Yeah, right. Matter of fact,
that's a great point, Brad. And talking about money from other places, let's go into number two.
Number two.
Their stories coming up a notch to number two.
One of the most high-profile races in the entire United States. Last night saw Wesley Bell defeating Cori Bush in the Democratic primary in the 1st Congressional District. Brad, for folks who are listening in real time, whether over the air or if they're on the live stream, which, by the way, this morning you could find a link to the live stream. I promised Scott Faughn that I would put it up on my website today, and it's up. You can find. So I think we might have a few more people listening on the live stream today, Brad. And if you're listening, you heard Cori Bush, as we led into the show, give a fiery speech about how she is going to bring AIPAC down, Brad. This is not the end of Cori Bush, and she's going to continue her fight to bring down AIPAC. Of course, she's talking about the American-Israeli I don't believe they're called Political Action Committee, but they're a public affairs group representing Israel, and they are widely credited, certainly this morning, with providing the funds that help send Wesley Bell to Congress.
And they're the same ones that essentially beat Jamal Bowman in New York City, correct?
That's true. That's the exact same group, and they certainly have a lot of political muscle. And so, that race ended up being, I have the numbers in front of me here, Brad, roughly 51% to about 45 or 46%. So 5 points. So I wouldn't call it a razor thin margin, but it wasn't a huge margin. But still, anytime you knock off an incumbent, and Cori Bush was a 2-term incumbent, it's certainly noteworthy. And Lord knows it was expensive and nasty.
Once again, I don't understand the dynamics, and I don't think this is going to be your number one story, but we can talk about it maybe in another segment. But the situation yesterday with the VP pick for Kamala, and once again, why did they not go with Josh Shapiro? Because
he happens to be Jewish.
Yes, and that's what the experts are saying. That's not me being, Mr. Stupid, talk show host guy. These are the experts saying, Kamala didn't want to offend the voters in
Jewish
Michigan and Minnesota because there are a lot of Palestinian supporters in those states, and if he put Josh Shapiro in there, I'm going like, okay, whatever. I mean, and the other thing I heard was. Maybe we're stray here, so don't get mad at me. But the other thing was that the experts said, she didn't want to have Shapiro because he was a better candidate for president than she was. So
I heard that as well.
She didn't want to have herself being outdone by the Veep candidate, whereas like with Biden, he didn't have to worry about that, right? But that's a whole other story. Okay, we ready for number one?
We sure are.
The number one.
Missouri's next governor will be Mike Kehoe. Mike Kehoe won a tough, largely three-way primary last night, Brad, with 40% of the vote. Bill Eigel eclipsed the son of John Ashcroft. He eclipsed Jay Ashcroft. The final tally was Kehoe 40%, Eigel 33%, Jay Ashcroft 23%. So really, not again, another race with not a razor-thin margin. Brad, the conventional wisdom here was that it was always a two-person race between Kehoe and Ashcroft. And cynics said, well, Bill Eigel had his moment, and Bill Eigel is drifting back down. But a really strong showing by Bill Eigel here. And really, the coalition that Kehoe built between whether they're industry groups, whether they're the folks that Kehoe got a chance to know in his role as lieutenant governor. And Mike Kehoe was everywhere across the state. And again, he was viewed as I think, kind of a steady hand in an era of a lot of bombastic talk. I think a lot of voters viewed Mike Kehoe as a steady hand. I would point out that the Kansas City Star headline today reads, Mike Kehoe wins Missouri Republican race for governor in victory for party establishment. So I think we'll see the media in the next few days celebrating the fact that Bill Eigel lost, and I think the media cheering on the fact that somebody who's not, frankly, bombastic won that primary.
Well,
those are our top three today, Brad.
Were you surprised that Eigel came out as number two?
No, I wasn't. And in fact, if you go to my website, Brad, I have a link today to This Week in Missouri Politics from back in December. And Scott Faughn had both Stephanie Bell and I on his midweek update. Stephanie had predictions. Now, Stephanie, to her credit, predicted that Kehoe would win. She said 45% of the vote, Ashcroft 35%, with Eigel only getting 20%. Now, for the record, Brad, I said that Mike Kehoe would get 40%, Bill Eigel 35%, and Jay Ashcroft 25%. Those numbers ended up being Mike Kehoe 40%, Bill Eigel 33%, and Jay Ashcroft 23%. So I would suggest folks go check out those numbers on my website today.
Some things just don't change. Someone called me and said, hey, are you going to the Eigel watch party for the election last night? It was at Old Hickory Country Club there on Mid-Rivers Mall in St. Peter's. And I go, you know what? I think I'll go. And I showed up, and there was a big burly guy at the door, and he says, what's your name? And I give him my name, and he says, you're on the list of people you can't come in, so they wouldn't let me in.
Absolutely. It's happened before. One of the best things of this show, Brad, was how we were able to squash your imaginary beef with Bill Eigel. It is a good opportunity, too, here, Brad, to talk about. First of all, to say thanks to Scott Faughn for having me on his show last night, his election night special. Also, a big thanks to the whole team that put the show together. Kelton Turner really quarterbacked the whole operation in terms of producing it. Jason, Jarrett, Miranda, a number of folks were helping. There's pandemonium behind the scenes when you get these election results coming in. And I'm so proud of the product that Scott and the team put out, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of it. Well, so I just wanted to say that.
I have to tell you, that's Scott's own studio, correct? He's not renting that. He owns
correct,
that studio,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and in fact, he rents it out to other content creators.
Well, I don't know behind the scenes, the equipment, stuff like that. But boy, when you look at it, from the consumer standpoint, it's sort of cool. I mean, it's like a regular TV thing. You got like, what's the guy? I can't remember the guy's name. We talked about this before when you're Critadel, or what's his name? Cardetti.
Jack Cardetti.
Okay,
yeah.
When they had the interview with Jack Cardetti, who was on I guess he was on a Zoom call or something like that, and they put that, you had the two frame, where you and Mr. Faughn were on, in your anchor desk, and he was over in the right corner. I'm going like, damn, this is just like watching regular television. These guys are really got it going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we had, among the guests that I would just point out that we had come on, we had Denny Hoskins come on after his victory. We had Vivek Malik come on, and we had a number of other consultants dial in, and then state Senate candidates that were successful. A gentleman named Jamie Berger won his race, and many others. It was great to see Denny. What was beautiful is that a lot of these calls were coming in from victory celebrations, Brad. And sometimes it's hard to hear the folks because everybody's just so raucous and having such a good time. But a really professional – I can't tell you enough how impressed I was by everything that Kelton and Scott and the team put together. It was just a top-notch event.
And I thought the best call was when Corey Bush called in and did the Zoom call. I thought that was the best call all night.
It was great too. Well, she saw that I frequently call you a Zionist. So she felt that we were a little bit simpatico in that, she and I. So
okay, now question for you: what does a guy like Bill Eigel do next? I mean, is he going to be appointed?
It's a great question.
Is he going to be?
I don't know. First of all, his political career certainly is not over, and that doesn't mean he'll run for elective office again. But an analogy that we didn't get to talk about last night on Scott's show was that, gosh, that would be 24 years now. In the general election, a gentleman named Jim Talent lost, and it was crushing. I was always a big Jim Talent guy, and within 2 years, he beat an incumbent U.S. senator and became a member of the United States Senate. So I don't think Bill Eigel is done. If he chooses to stay in politics, people will still follow him. People will still care what he has to say.
Well, I've heard people talk about the fact that, and I heard somebody, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, call him goofy. Do you think he's goofy?
I guess that depends on what your definition of goofy is. I mean, I think anytime you're a tall guy and you say a lot of strong, powerful things, people are going to think you're a little bit out there, I guess. But I think the fact that he comes out and he does a pretty funny ad about Mexicans, I think that just adds a, I don't know. It probably leads to more people calling him goofy.
Well, to me, it breaks the mold of, hi, I'm Joe Smith, and this is my wife and kids, and we live on a farm here in Missouri, and we're conservative, but we've got cow poop on our boots. That's how conservative we are. It's just like, okay, how many times have I seen the same thing? This is like, you pull out the format sheet from the political consultant. Okay, cameraman A, you over there, shoot the wife smiling at her husband. You know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff. It's like the same crap
absolutely.
All the time. But I don't know. Once again, Bill Eigel hates me, but I still am.
Brad, I'm so glad that we ended that whole thing.
He does.
Well, ever since we started this show, you've had an opportunity to end the beef with him. Mike Carter talks to you now. It's been a beautiful thing over these last 9 months.
One more time, we'll go for the segment 2. Explain to me the Mike Carter thing. To me, that is the weirdest thing in the world. When he
performed so well?
Well, no, when he ran for Senate, he spent $500,000 of his own money. You couldn't go anywhere. There were yard signs everywhere. You went to parades, like the county fair parades in like Troy, and there were 14,000 volunteers, and he lost. Okay, this time around he goes for Secretary of State. He runs this campaign where he's talking about his law firm and the TV show he does and his stuff. He does that campaign in April, May, and June, and then he stops advertising, and he never ever advertises again in all of July and all of August. Explain to me what he was doing. Does that make any sense to you?
Of why he's running and spending his own money, you mean?
No, why all of a sudden, once again, all the other candidates, when down the stretch, they were pouring on more coal.
I say you're asking why he stopped. Well, for all we know, too, he certainly did not stop the voicemails and the text, Brad. So just because you wouldn't see TV or radio, people were just talking on Scott's midweek update yesterday that people were still getting Mike Carter texts and voicemails all through the weekend, Brad.
Yeah, but he didn't put the full court press in. Once again, you and I talk about this all the time. It's the media mix. Nowadays, you can't just say, well, I'm going to put all my money on Facebook. Well, there's a lot of, for example, John is not on Facebook, right? So in other words, if somebody spends their budget on Facebook, you're not going to see it. And once again, you have to spread the money around. You have to do the mix. You have to do television. You have to do radio, except for my station, which nobody does. But, you have to, and so he's going to do texts, okay? A lot of people are going to, a lot of people are going to go, the guy's texting me, I'm not voting for him. You know what I'm saying? Because
I do know, yeah. And so it's, I think it's really easy for us to look at anybody's strategy at this point. Jamie Corley had a really text-heavy campaign as well. Now she did a whole lot of other, campaign tactics, but she was largely text-focused as well. And I can't speak to Mike's strategy there.
Monday I got a call from a Cori Bush supporter. Should I tell that story on the air?
Yeah, when we come back, for sure.
Okay,
I don't know the story, so I don't know if it's good or bad to tell, but I want to hear it.
Well, it was an interesting story. Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?